Hey friends, good afternoon on a beautiful, crisp Saturday here in April. Thanks for being patient. It's been interesting getting everything working together and all the technology. So thanks for being patient as we learn what new weekly rhythms actually look like. But without further ado, this is the first video in the series that we're going to be doing on our spiritual practices. And one of the reasons that I wanted to engage with this and kind of explore how we be Christian, how we are Christian, is because right now our routines and our rhythms and our schedules are all up in the air. And I think now more than ever is the time to continue to engage in those spiritual practices that keep us grounded. This is the same thing that they tell pastors when they move: continue your spiritual practices. It's the same thing that they tell people when they're in the midst of crisis: continue your spiritual practices, because everything else is up in the air. If we can hold on to these things, then we'll get through this just fine. So that's a little bit of the reasoning behind, and this video is just to kind of explain what we will be doing for the next several weeks or so. So um, every week by Friday, now that I've figured out what needs to be done, every week by Friday, we're going to go ahead and upload a video on what it means to be, how we are Christian, I suppose. And so we're going to go ahead and talk through some of those practices that the church has done for centuries, that are just have been passed down from generation to generation to generation, so that we can continue to be formed into the image of Christ. Um, some of those practices that we engage in are prayer and study, fasting and worship, solitude and silence. So we're going to go ahead and explore those for the next several weeks. And before we get started, I've got some things that I want us to reflect upon, some things to prepare ourselves for this time. So one of the first things that I would suggest is don't just watch these videos, close the file, and head off to the next thing or scroll on by. What I would suggest is when you watch these videos is that you take some time away, that you make this a part of your Friday or Saturday, or if you watch it later in the week, that's fine too. But whatever day and time you decide to watch these, set it apart, make it purposeful. Say, I'm going to sit down and watch this video, and after that, I'm going to journal my thoughts, or I'm going to open up and read some scripture, or I'm going to call someone up who I know is already watching these videos and say, hey, let's talk about this. Um, make this a time that's not just passive information gathering, but a time for reflection itself. So that would be the first thing that I would encourage us to do is, if you're a journaler, journal. If you're like me and you process by speaking, uh, go ahead and call someone up who also processes through talking. Um, if you make art, make art. If you're a reader, go ahead and continue to read more things, dive deeper into this subject. That's one of the things that I'm planning on doing, is giving people more opportunities to read and learn as well. But that's the first thing, is make this purposeful. Um, do this with intention. Don't just do this passively as a spectator sport, but really engage with what we're doing. You'll get the most out of it if you do that. The second thing that we need to do before we really dive in is, um, we need to answer some questions for ourselves. So here are the three questions that I would like you to think through this week. So the first question is this: what are those practices or habits or things that you have done that are Christian? What are those uniquely Christian things that you can point to and say, I do this on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis? Um, Maybe that's prayer. Maybe that's studying scripture. Maybe that's um, pilgrimage or fasting or retreats or Sabbath or what have you. But I want you to sit back and come up with those things that are uniquely Christian that you do on a regular basis. Um, think through those, write them down, and I think it'll be interesting to see what you find. The second question that I want to ask is that I want us to think about is what are those things that we have tried to do and have just not worked at all? Um, so I have one colleague who has said, Luke, I've tried fasting, and I just haven't figured it out. It just this season in my life right now, it doesn't work, and I don't know. Or maybe you've tried to read scripture, but it's just confusing and wordy and hard, and for whatever reason you don't engage with that as much as other people seem to. So that's the second question. What have you tried that hasn't seemed to work? What have you tried that hasn't seemed to work? And then here's the third question. When you imagine the perfect Christian life, or when you imagine what holiness means on a practical level, what does that look like for you? Um, or put another way, if you were to have a perfect schedule that allowed you to um, really grow and mature in your faith and get everything else done, what would that look like? What is your ideal Christian life? So again, those three questions were, what do you already do? What have you tried but not succeeded at? And what is your ideal Christian life? Or what are your ideal Christian practices? So as we explore this topic with each other, I'd like you to think through those three questions. I'd like you to set aside a specific time where you watch these videos and engage with them, either by talking with someone else, by journaling, or by diving deeper. But friends, I'm excited. This is stuff that I think is super important and very timely in this time where we have a lot of time to work on those parts of our personal piety that sometimes get lost in the shuffle of normal church life. So that's it for today. There's your three questions. There's your suggestion on your new practice. And may God bless you. May God keep you. And I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.